Monroe Betterton, by all accounts, seemed to be a normal guy living a normal life with his wife Elizabeth and their several children. But it seemed that once he got angry, a switch flipped inside his head and he became an entirely different person. During one of the many arguments between him and his first wife, he beat her until she was unconscious, as she later died from her injuries. Somehow, Monroe wasn't charged for this fatal assault, and he quickly married another woman. However, things didn't go smoothly again, as 2 years later, he and his second wife got into another argument, and in his drunken state, he stabbed her 3 times, even pouring whiskey on her face as she was dying on the ground. He was sentenced to 99 years, but he was somehow paroled after 11, and of course, he got married again. Welcome to History's Biggest Villains. Lee Monroe Betterton was born on March 24, 1872 in Kings Perry Township, Missouri, as one of 15 children born to 2 farmers. Not much is known about his childhood, but once he became an adult, he married a woman named Laura Elizabeth McCoy, with whom he had 4 children. The Bettertons seemed to be living a normal life, as Monroe's only criminal act was failing to pay fines, but by 1904, problems in the marriage arose, as the two frequently quarreled, mostly because of Monroe's drinking. During another argument, he snapped, beating Laura until she was unconscious. Neighbors had to rush in and get her to the hospital, but Laura died from her injuries. Somehow, Monroe wasn't charged for her death, and a few weeks later, he hired a Choctaw woman named Rose Hudson to be his housekeeper. The pair eventually caught feelings for each other, so they entered a common-law marriage. Over the next 2 years, the relationship had problems as well, as Rose would leave him on multiple occasions, only to return a few hours later. On December 28, 1906, the couple had another argument, but after Rose left again, she returned and accompanied Monroe to visit his father in Verona, as he had sent his kids to live with him after Laura's death. After staying there for some time, the couple decided to catch a train home. Monroe was 3 pints of whiskey deep when they got off at Pierce City. They chose to walk to nearby Manette, but like clockwork, the pair were bickering again, and in a drunken rage, Monroe pulled out a knife and stabbed Rose 3 times, including once in the heart. As she laid on the ground clinging to life, Monroe emptied his whiskey bottle on her face until he was noticed by a train crew. The men dragged him to the city jail, where he quickly confessed to killing Rose, saying, "I was guilty of that woman's death, but it was an accident." He even claimed that she struck him first, and he stabbed her in self-defense. Monroe was found guilty of Rose's murder, and he was sentenced to 99 years. But despite this, he was paroled in 1917, only serving 11 years of his sentence. For some reason, he was one of 238 convicted murderers in Missouri to get paroled in the last 3 years. After he was released from prison, he did the least shocking thing imaginable. He got married. This time, it was to a woman named Elzada Lockwood. The pair settled in the southern part of Manette, and the only trouble they experienced in the beginning was an accidental fire that burned down their home on March 26, 1919. However, the couple divorced a few months later, but on July 1st, they remarried in Mount Vernon, coincidentally on the same day as the wedding between Monroe's son Ernest and Elzada's daughter Mamie. The two couples chose to celebrate this occasion by visiting some relatives in Veneta, Oklahoma. On July 9th, Monroe and Elzada were at each other's throats. Then Monroe pulled out a revolver and shot his wife. The first bullet hit her arm, the second went through her back and pierced her heart, and the third shot was after she was already on the ground. Monroe then aimed the gun at Mamie, but Ernest was able to wrestle the gun away from his dad. While the neighbors rushed in to help, Monroe tried to pin the murder on his son. Nobody believed him and he was whisked away to the city jail. While awaiting trial for murder, he threatened to kill himself and his family if he were let out. Even as his own children testified against him, Monroe still continued to claim his innocence, as he said this during the trial. "I didn't shoot my wife. I wasn't in the room when she was shot. I was in the north room, standing in the door. There were 3 shots fired just as fast as a man could count. I ran in there. I didn't know what happened. Mamie Betterton was standing right by the door. She had that gun and ran and shoved it into my side and snapped it twice. I took the gun away from her. I started into the north room and met my son, and he said, 'Give me that gun.' I handed it to him and went on into the room where my daughter was and asked her where was the nearest doctor. And we went out on the porch where my wife was laying dead. No man ever loved a woman any dearer than I loved that woman. I don't know who shot my wife. She said several times that she was going to commit suicide and get out of her trouble." Okay. After a 3-month trial, Monroe was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to death, as his execution date was set for January 23, 1920. Even on death row, Monroe continued to profess his innocence, and after a mental evaluation, his execution was stayed until July 9th, which is exactly a year to the day of Elzada's murder. On his final day, He released a statement to the press still claiming his innocence, but also stating that he was ready to be reunited with God. He died in the electric chair at noon, as he was 48 years old. Man, this is ridiculous. He just had some type of just weird mental lapse that he just snapped for some reason. Every time he got into an argument with his wife, it's just this trigger in his brain, like, oh, I gotta kill her now. Like, what? Like, when he just beats her to death, and the second one he stabs her, and the next one he shoots her. Like, crazy person. Then he tries to pin the murder on his son. Like, come on, man. Like, don't even get charged for killing your first wife. I don't even understand that. Like, you beat her to death, and you don't get charged with her murder. Like, I don't understand that. I appreciate y'all for the support. Leave a like if you enjoy. Hit that subscribe button to my channel. Turn my post notification on if you haven't already. Thank you. Please be safe. Stay on the grind. I'm out. Peace.